lots of ways to make scales and all the different keys seem really complicated on guitar. And what I want to try to do is show you that some of the underlying fundamentals of the scales are always the same. Up until now, we've been learning the note names and locations on the fretboard. But actually, we can derive almost all of the information we need about scales just from what we've already mapped out. We've been looking at how the natural notes fall on the individual strings and the shapes between the strings, but we haven't been assigning a particular note as sort of the main note. And as we'll see, we could take any of the notes and say that this is the main note, and then line up the others around it. And then each of those is sort of a different scale, but see how they're sort of all the same? In theory, we usually use C major as sort of our starting point, because for a long time, major has been sort of the most commonly used mode. And then starting on C gives us just natural notes, which makes it easier to talk about and visualize. And then actually, we can just use our guitars to show us the pattern of steps that we would get in a major scale. Because when we go 2 frets is a whole step, and when we go 1 fret is a half step, like we get between E and F and B and C. And so if we start on the note C, I can just count up along 1 string to D, which gives us a whole step, and then to E, which gives us another whole step, which is right next door to F. So there's our half step. And then I go a whole step to get to G, a whole step to get to A, and a whole step to B, and then when we finish with a half step to get back to the C. And so that gives us our C major scale. And so all major scales in that sense are the same. They all share the same pattern of steps. It's just that you get different spellings. And C major is the simplest key, but we can also abstract it further down just to the idea of scale degrees, which we can use to represent all of the keys. And so just like we use the half steps between B and C and E and F to map out the fretboard, if we're going to map out a major scale, the key is to remember that the half steps are between the 3rd and the 4th note of the scale, and the 7th and the root. The challenge is to start on random notes, and then for bonus marks, we'll see how to spell it as well. First, we'll just count up using the pattern of steps of a major scale. So I'll just start on the note E. The notes, the thing that is the same about every major scale is that they always have one of every letter. So no matter what letter you start on, just continue the pattern of one of every letter, and then from there we'll add sharps and flats as necessary. A good practice technique is that whenever your scale is going to get a little too high on the neck, is that we can sort of warp zone back down an octave somewhere around the 12th fret. And so if you were going to play the 12th fret, you could play open instead, or just take one of the notes around there and move down 12 frets. And so if I started a scale here, and it would get a little too high, when I get to one of those notes, I'll just go down 12 frets. The weird one is probably, what if you start on a non-natural note? Do you call it the sharp or flat name? And actually, with a little investigation, we can basically figure it out. Because some spellings will sort of lead you to absurd results. For example, let's start here. If we decide to call it B flat, the first thing we'll do is write in one of every letter. And then let's see if we need to add sharps and flats. And so we need to add a flat here and here. If we decided to call it A sharp, then we'll write one of every letter, and then let's see what we need. A sharp, B sharp, C double sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F double sharp, and G double sharp. And that's a bit of a mouthful, and we don't really use keys where we already have double sharps or double flats in the key signature. And so it actually makes a lot more sense to spell it with the B flat spelling. So in a way, it doesn't matter what I call it because it's the same sound, and that might be good enough. But if you're interested in spelling, that's how it works. There are the two kind of steps, whole steps and half steps, kind of 1 fret's worth and 2 frets worth. Let's just look at pairs of C's and D's that go across strings. And so we get this shape that's a bit of a reach, but it's true for every cross string whole step, other than the ones on the 3rd and 2nd string, which look a little easier to reach actually. A half step is even a little harder to reach. But again, it's a little easier on the 3rd and 2nd. Between the pattern of steps and the ability to take cross-string steps, we'll be able to start to do scales that go across the strings.